everybody, and welcome back for round 2 of tonight on advancing practice. We're really excited to have had so many tweets and so many people watching. I hope that continues for the second part as well. Just so that to let you know how you can join in, let me hand you over to the fabulous Vanessa, who'll tell you how you can participate.
Hello everyone, I'm Vanessa Garrity. I had a little break for the first half, but been following the conversation on social media. I hope you'll all continue to send your questions and comments into the panel for part 2 of Advancing Nursing Practice. You can join in one of 2 ways. You can either join in on Facebook Live. You just need to like the Unite MHNA Facebook page and you'll get the live stream straight onto your page. And we'd love to hear your comments and any questions for the panel. You can also join in on Twitter. You just need to follow MHNR 2020 hashtag and you'll see the feed there. Again, any questions via Twitter would be great. And I'll have my head down tonight mostly, having a look on social media and hopefully feeding in any thoughts and comments to the panel. So I'll hand you over to Ben now. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Thank you, Nikki. Hello, everybody. I'm Ben Hannigan. I work at Cardiff University. I'm a mental health nursing academic there, and I'm really pleased to be here for this second part of this advanced practice panel discussion today. By the sounds of it, Nikki, the conversation has already been kind of seamlessly continuing from the panel that was discussing advanced practice earlier, so that's great. And don't forget, MHNR 2020 is the hashtag for people to join in. So yeah, really looking forward to this discussion.
Fantastic. Don't forget, each of the panelists has already put up a video talking about their work that you can follow watching through the hashtags. And then what we're going to do now is have a panel discussion. So let me introduce the panel to you. First of all, Helen, can you tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes, hello, I'm Helen Oldknow. I'm a learning disability nurse and mental health nurse, and I'm currently working at Rotherham Doncaster Southumber NHS Trust as research nurse.
Fantastic. Kevin?
Yeah, hi there, I'm Kevin Williamson. I'm the head of research at Rotherham Doncaster and Southumber NHS Foundation Trust. I'm actually a nutritionist by background, but I'm doing my PhD as well in nutrition and psychosis at the moment.
Fantastic, thank you. That sounds fantastic. Steve?
Hi, I'm Steve Hemingway. I'm another mental health academic. I work at the University of Huddersfield. I would like to say that I would have been joined by my colleague from Southwest Yorkshire Partnership Trust, Karen Greenbank, but she hasn't been able to make it. So I will be talking on her behalf as well as my impressions of our work.
Fantastic. So let's come to Ben to start us off.
I think there's a really strong theme in your presentations, Steve, and then Helen and Kevin in your presentation too, about really encouraging people to get involved in research and to kind of make research something that we just do without thinking of it as being something that is unusual or something that is only done by a small number of people. So Steve, to come to you first. So tell us about what you and Karen Greenbank have done. Karen was an advanced nurse, is an advanced nurse practitioner, is that right? And
yes, indeed. If I may provide you with a little bit of context towards how the research, how the evaluation came about. I'm lucky enough to work as a memory nurse when I can get there in the trust as well. So I am part of what was a growing a number of colleagues decided that advanced nurse practice needed to develop within the memory service at first, and I was involved with a colleague called Richard Clibbins, another colleague, where we wrote about a piece of work which said that we've now got this framework, and in order for nurses to want to go and do research, it needs to be paid appropriately, so you can move from a band 6 to a band 7. Secondly, that it needed to have the requisite education to get to the, so that we're providing a pathway that way. So we've captured it that way. And then Karen's work was really about her work as a one-stop shop in terms of they used to use the word substitution in terms of nursing substituting the work of, in this case, psychiatrists within the memory service. And Karen had conversations with her prescribing or her senior colleague, Suba, who's the medical director within the trust, and they said they need to capture what had actually happened in terms of it seemingly that Karen's work and the feedback that Karen was getting from doing autonomous practice, the diagnosis, the prescribing, the continued support, so that they had one person to go to. Was well, they decided to do the service evaluation, and that's when due to the network that I'm involved in the trust, we have quite a big district, as most trusts do, and I thought this needed publishing in terms of it is not it's a survey of one person's work as against some standards, but in terms of the research, and going back to the theme that you're talking about, Ben, in terms of where do you start research? Well, I think some things, no matter, it's not a randomized controlled trial, it's not changing the world, but it's the start of something. It's the start of showing evidence that nurses need to show, certainly within advanced practice, what good outcomes they have. And certainly from, hopefully, if people have had a look at the PowerPoint and the soon to be published paper, they'll see that we've said at this point in time, this is an important announcement about how the nurse can work and how it can be captured and how it can make a difference.
One of the things that really surprised me, Steve, from in your presentation was that I think you said towards the beginning that you couldn't find any published research evidence which showed that advanced nurse practitioners made a difference to outcomes, which maybe then kind of
mental health, certainly.
In mental health, yeah, which I was really surprised to hear, actually. But I guess that also gave you a reason to do the evaluation that you and Karen and colleagues did in order to kind of fill that gap a little bit.
Yes, indeed. And it probably needs, again, a follow-up. A challenge might be that a really strong systematic review needs to look, because we did more of a narrative review when we looked at this. But at this moment in time, as far as I know, there was some really strong research that's been done with advanced practitioners. But there's a lot of literature that talks about what role they're doing, if they're making a difference. It's about time they're making a difference, but we need to start showing those outcomes. Yeah. Because I think the opportunity is there, because nurses are now embedded as advanced practitioners, as Helen would.
Yeah. So Helen, and we'll come back. I'm sure we'll hear about what you found and the survey that you developed, Steve. But just to bring Helen and Kevin in to the discussion. So you've actually won a prize, haven't you, for the work that you have done embedding research in your NHS trust. Tell us about this Nursing Times Award, which we need to congratulate you for. Well done.
You all right?
Say that again. Yeah.
You.
Yeah, okay.
So we won the Nursing Times Award last year in 2019 for clinical research nursing. So we were really, really proud to win that. Really, it felt like a good achievement, not just for us, but for the trust. The practitioners in the trust and our research champions. So really excited to win it.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, well done, fantastically well done. And what is it you've done then? So Helen, what is it that Nursing Times recognised you and Kevin and your colleagues for having done?
Well, in their summation and the write-up where we won, they sort of evidenced our information we gave on service user and carer involvement. And equally with that, I think what was helpful is that we work with anyone in the trust, whether they be a healthcare professional, whether they work in management, whether they work in estates and facilities if there's research and they're interested and they want to take part. So we've got a trust of over 3,000 people. And we might not get a research study in. Well, you might not be able to take part as part of the research team, but actually that piece of research might be of particular relevance to you and your personal position. So we always offer and inform all our staff of all the research that comes in, whether it be on autism or dementia or mother and baby units. Everybody has an opportunity and everybody's aware of what happens, and we can help people take part in research. But also for us as nurses, certainly mental health, we encourage our colleagues to come and join us, shadow us for the day. And we get lots of support of students that are on their degree courses and come to us for advice and help that we can give them, really, and contacts that we can make. So really it was about growing research within the trust.
Got some fantastic images and stories in your presentation too. Is it you've got a community research hub, is that right? And yeah, and there's a certainly part in your presentation where you talk about opening up, just in the way you're saying now, Helen, opportunities to student nurses who are on clinical placement with you to become involved.
Yes, we're one of the first trusts in our locality to do that, to offer ourselves as a placement for student nurses. And I know that the situation is changing about AHP professionals and their training. So we will welcome everyone to come and have a look at what we do and hopefully get the research bug.
Yeah. How do you do that then? How do you, because I've certainly had experiences where I've approached colleagues in NHS organisations to encourage them, for example, to perhaps join a research study that I might be involved in, or I've maybe approached teams with a view to inviting them to invite people who use their services to join research studies. And sometimes people are really keen to be involved. Sometimes people are less keen to be involved and don't necessarily automatically see the relevance or the importance of being part of a research project. What are the things that you're doing then that allow you to overcome that? How are you kind of building this research culture?
We make a really good cup of tea. I think that's the first thing that we do. And coffee. I think, joking aside, I think it's really important. I mean, we've got Helen, who's a fantastic, nurse working with us, and I think there was one of the study teams recently that came there, and they actually went away with the phrase "Be more Helen," just because of the kind of that involvement and that inspiring all the clinical teams. We've got another nurse in the trust that works in our children's care group, and she's been really keen to grow it with practitioners in her own division, really. And she set up a community of practice group specifically for research, so doing bite-sized pieces. And I think that if we can get one or two clinicians involved that are kind of working in clinical fields, that snowball effect has been a massive help for us, really, because I think that they can give the message across better than we can, I think, about research. I think would you agree with that, Helen? I think that's probably... Yes. Yeah.
And I think we use any opportunity we can to spread the word, really. So if there's a networking event for AHPs or psychologists or nurses in different localities or different teams, will certainly go there and talk about research. And I think a lot of it's almost like learning another language, research. So really to simplify things and not make it complicated, and to be a principal investigator, we relate that back to what people would see in their own work. So if you're the shift manager, you're responsible. You need to know that people on the shift can do what you're asking them to do and have the correct qualifications and skills. Well, that's a principal investigator. So really we relate what the research part is to what people work with and know, really, and have experience of. And I think another thing we do, Kevin, I think it's fair for the team as a whole, is that we do support people and we try to take the burden off clinical staff, that we're not adding to the work that we're doing. Yeah. We're supporting and we're promoting and we're learning together. So actually, as much as we can, we would take the burden and
Yeah, definitely.
as much as possible.
Yeah,
facilitate. If I may, I suppose there's two things that I can say. I mean, with what I would say, the service user and carer experience evaluation was really Karen's work. I picked it up in a meeting where she came to present what some of her results were, and we started discussions. I sent her an email, and we then started the conversations, and a very long journey, because I wanted her to actually write the paper. It was her work. We did bring John Stevenson in, a statistician, who, by the way, said is part of some of the most easy research he's ever done, because the scoring was so high for her work. So, you know, of course, we've got to think about other ways of capturing things to see if people were less satisfied. The other side to it is, I was interested that Helen had said about getting student nurses involved, or helping student nurses in their projects. And that's wonderful, because that's real. One way that we've done it, and we tend to do a generic in our first year, so to try and build that capacity, if you like. In the first year, we will do what is evidence-based. The second is to actually learn the methodologies, and then choose and defend why they're going to do a particular methodology. And of course, they're going to do what the research is, what the methodology is. Third year being the project, and that's done in a group. But we're also inviting people from the trust, research governance, in to actually say what audits are available. Because quite often very busy clinical staff have, they want to capture perinatal services, older people's, the introduction of different style of management within a psychiatric intensive care unit. Things like some of these that came up, it was too soon. We weren't able to process it, but for both our degree and our master's students, I think actually going out and learning how to do an audit, capture it, negotiate with clinical staff, obviously through somebody like Helen and Kevin, and so that is a way of bringing it, theory into practice, rather than yet another literature review, or some of our students going in and doing whatever method they're doing in a certain limited way, because all they can do is probably some healthcare practice students. It isn't. So it is one way of getting out and thinking about survey evaluations, or in terms of service evaluations or audits. So they're rich for actually looking at, looking at both, again, going back to Angela's research, well, originally, service evaluation, which has got something to say. And certainly within my career, I got involved in another service evaluation about the administration of medicines, but again, of its time, it's said about, it was said that, it very much grounded about competence of nurses and how to grow that, and how to develop how to develop capacity. So, it's not only that universities will lead, but it's also helping universities, helping trusts, people like Helen, to actually highlight what research is going on, and maybe involving some of our students in coming in and doing some actually clinically based evaluations.
And there are some really very fine distinctions between things like service evaluation, audit, research, service improvement. A lot of the methods, the techniques have always seemed to me to be, there's a big overlap, isn't there? So in all those different activities, people might find themselves reading through notes, they might find themselves asking questions of people, they might use surveys like you did, Steve, in your evaluation. So there's a lot that can be learned, I would have thought, in undertaking things like audit, which is something that student nurses clearly can do, and registrants too, which are great preparations then for people who might want to become involved in research. There are definite overlaps, I think, between those kind of activities. It's often the context, I think, in which questions are being asked and the kind of governance frameworks and the kind of overall aim that makes the difference. But the actual techniques or the gathering of data,
data collection,
that happens in all those kind of types of activity, doesn't it?
Yeah, and within audit, some people describe it and say that it's a way of avoiding ethics, but no, the governance department will make sure, research governance department, Kevin, Helen, will make sure that everything is carried through, so that they will have to do some form of ethical validation.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes, I'd like to say Kevin and I did a piece of service evaluation on dietary intake in dementia inpatient area, and certainly everything was ethically to the standards of research. So from the consents, perhaps a permission worked through an NHS ethics, but it was certainly permissions through our care trust. So all the governance that was laid out for research, we followed through for service evaluation through to the publication.
Absolutely.
And our student nurses, the nursing team on the ward were all involved in that. That we're learning for us all. And of course, the fun part is the data collection, isn't it? It's always the best bit, the meeting people, getting the data. And a good time, didn't we? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
meeting people, for student nurses, they always say that it's more the fun part once they've decided what they're doing and they actually enjoy. They certainly value those conversations about the research questions and how they're going to focus, what they need to do, but they can start to see how difficult, it's never easy, because there's always things that you've got to overcome to enable that data collection that Ben was talking about. But again, that's where your role comes in, Helen. Yeah.
And certainly in our colleagues, we've been round meeting people talking about research, but actually the work that they're doing, and similar to yourself at South West Yorkshire, this needs publicising, this needs publishing. This work that you're doing, people need to know, really. And people are just that busy working that they don't see what they're doing is of. Could be the start of some research, groundbreaking work, really.
Excuse me, Kevin. Was it Kevin?
No, I think it was Ben. Was it?
Sorry, it was me. But Steve, carry on. I'll come back in a minute.
I was just thinking about Karen's work, and again, back to the motivation of why. Now Karen's a very accomplished practitioner, and she's written very well, and she's able to assimilate how to write. It's taken us a year to develop it and things, but she's done it, and she could see the value of it, and that's how she's developed this work. But part of the 4 pillars of advanced practice is to actually research, is to actually look at what you're doing in there. So she's already done that, she's proven that, but it almost needed that academic validation or publication to be able to, because it was important, it needed sharing. So, very much, and going back to Ben, is if people have done something good, get in touch with people like myself, certainly Ben, Nikki, Kevin, Helen, to actually think what can be done with it, because it is so important. And again, it's back, how do you start in research? Well, quite often you've probably done the research, or you've got a strong hunch of what is going on. So how do you capture that? And that's when you bring people like ourselves in.
I think it's also really interesting as well because we can do a piece of research and we can, the dissemination, we can publish the results, but I think it's the unseen influencer effect. And I think there was one lad, wasn't there, Helen, on the ward that went off to do more academic, master's course and things. And you don't know how many people you're influencing when you do some of these things, that, whether that's changing career pathways or changing sort of thoughts and things, which I think would be quite useful to capture, because that's part of it as well. Embedding it in that culture, isn't it? It's kind of getting it in people's minds, isn't it?
It's normalising it.
Yeah, it is. Exactly right, it is. Yeah, it is.
It is normalising, isn't it? And which I think, so Steve, you work with Karen, who developed her role as an advanced independent nurse practitioner working with older people with dementia, and the natural thing to do was to better understand the impact of that and to lead an evaluation. And that's a great example, isn't it, of people working in the NHS and people working in universities collaborating together around a common purpose. Really important.
Yeah, and again, advanced practice is now, if it's time, it's becoming embedded, and I don't know if people are interested in that, but for me, in my career, I've known such titles as consultant nurse and advanced nursing, advanced practitioners and things like that, but it's never quite been captured about what's going on. And I think there is a movement now, of course, because of the conditions. Again, the previous paper that was published with Richard Clibbins was actually saying we need to get the remuneration right. We need to have the pathway, and that's where people will go. You capture that. So that's a paper. It's not research, but it's a position paper. It's saying this is what's happening, but within the same piece. It's something I'm excited about because I've wanted this to happen for a long time, really.
Nikki, Vanessa, maybe there might be a whole torrent of questions.
There are always questions. This is
always.
Mental health land. There's always people asking. And I think Steve's making some really valid points, that for discussions and for nurses to be thinking and sharing ideas, position papers are really important. Discussion papers are really important. Like even stuff like getting started with things like day in the life, that kind of stuff really opens us all up to thinking about how we're all working, what problems we share, what solutions we can generate together. That kind of interaction is so important. It's you see this kind of like hierarchy of evidence, don't you? With randomized controlled trials at the top that a lot of people are just terrified of, quite frankly. And then sort of like people sort of like qualitative research is seen as like a gateway drug. It's like, because you like a little bit of a chat and you start to find your way in. But for me, when I first started doing research, it was evaluations. And I stumbled into research without even realizing I was doing it as a practice development nurse and a ward manager back in the day. Start off doing evaluations, benchmarking, and you kind of get some skills which are transferable, as Ben was saying, and then you can kind of move over. So I think there's a lot to be said for the more debate and the more cross-pollination we have, the more people will be asking the right kind of questions and having the kind of conversations that really help us move forward. Did you want to read out the questions, Vanessa, or do you want me to bang on? You're on mute. I've wanted to say that to somebody else all day. I've always gone on mute.
Because my son was in giving me a news update earlier. So I was really interested in listening to the work in South West Yorkshire, because I was actually involved in that work during the discovery phase of it a few years ago. And I suppose that got me thinking really that nurses also need to be involved in research, because often it's nurses who know the services inside out and are delivering a lot of the care and have the relationship with people. And if we don't involve nurses in the design and the development of new services, then how can we make sure we've got services that are fit for purpose? And also nurses who then go on to work in those services, feeling that they've been engaged in the change is really important, isn't it? That it reflects the direction they feel that services need to go in. Because my experience of transformation and innovation and all those service improvement things is that if we don't involve people, then we can do what we want in terms of research and designing new services. But if we don't engage the staff, then we're kind of failing at the outset often. So, and it kind of links to one of the questions that we've got, which Nikki sent through, which is, I kind of feel like this is related in a way to what I'm saying, and that is, what are the views of the panel in relation to how nurse education and clinical practice is separate? This isn't found in other healthcare professionals. Does the impact on the identity of nurses who work in university as compared to nurses who deliver care? So basically, what's the impact in terms of the way in which we've separated nurse education and clinical practice? And I do think that links to what I'm saying about involving nurses, because often the two are seen as separate, and it's a cultural thing, isn't it, I think? So, and that's open to anyone in any of our panel members tonight, really. It's not directed at anyone in particular. So any thoughts?
I've been involved in nurse education for a long time, and seeing some really excellent work done, certainly from the undergraduates, diploma firstly, then it becomes degree. We've got the master's students, and they get a hunch. They do an excellent piece of work. They don't publish it. I'm not talking publication is the end, but they capture a moment.
Yeah.
How to embed that? I think there is a lot of cross work from what Nikki says, from talking about when she started doing service evaluations to then seemingly making it more seamless, making it easier to transition to university. But sometimes the division or the schism or whatever it is called, it is not there, because we do work closely and we want to, I think we firstly need to say that the service user carer needs to be at the forefront of all work, and outcomes needs to be looking at that. It needs to be meaningful towards them, although there are some research that's important about whether or not nurses' attitude to smoking, as long as you can see some sort of link towards how that will affect the way that they will assess people's physical health needs, and if you can help somebody to give up smoking. So, but I think, like any time, I don't know what Ben, Kevin, Helen think, Nikki, I think it's a rich moment in time to capture, to start working together.
Yeah. One of the really interesting things about co-production is, in trying to make research that service users fully participate in, control, request, and that really important move to sort of sharing power out. A lot of junior nurses have also been able to join in for the first time. And that is a really strange thing. When you think for the first time, we've actually spoken in a way that people can understand. And I'm not talking like service user stuff like they're separate, but just people, ordinary people going about their jobs, either using services or delivering services, have a clue what is happening for the first time. And one of the things that's been so exciting, I think, about co-production and that move to a bit more democratic is this idea that it's shareable. So the last question came from Fiona Nolan. Thank you, Fiona. And this one is from Adrian Jugdal. I think the fear for, and it's an interesting word, isn't it, use of fear in terms of research, is that clinicians sometimes see research as highbrow. Simple research can still be good. The other issue is that people see the destination of the results as a very long way away. And I wondered if either of you groups had any ideas that you felt would actually start to address these issues. The idea of research being very distant or actually excluding people.
I've got a thought on. Can I say something? Yeah, I'm going to. I think that's a really interesting, probably correct observation, that it can take a long while before a research study will produce its findings. It's probably going to be years. In a big study, and say a study funded by the National Institute for Health Research, it's probably going to be a year between the proposal being submitted for funding initially to actually being funded. And then there's the whole project setup and the generation of the data, the analysis, the writing up. So there really is quite a big time lag, which I, as a researcher, feels to me to be quite normal. But maybe for people who want to know results and want to know whether this is better than that, or want an answer to a question that is current now, it's a big ask that they might need to wait for 18 months, 2 years, even longer. So there is a different there are different timescales at play here, I think.
Very. Even with publication, think about how long it takes for you to sort of put something in to actually see it. It's huge length of time.
Yeah.
Indeed. That's where and if I'm beating the drum about audit and service evaluation, but that's where NICE guidance are looking at, are we getting our Karen's research as against the pillars of advanced practice, in terms of, are we doing the standards that set out? And so at least locally, and sometimes you can capture it and think and find out that it's got resonance just away from your local trust. So, you know, do look about doing that local based and capturing those moments. And then
something then.
I think there's something about managing expectations, because research that much longer to get your approvals in place, to write your proposals, and to get your permissions from the areas you want to go. So there is some truth that needs to be said. You know, it does take much longer. But you can, as Steve said, and as we've mentioned earlier, do other work for you. And there are transferable skills in the audit, in the evaluation, in writing, even reading a report that you can spot if there's any bias, if there's any issues in the work that's being done, any flaws that are obvious. So I think, you know, that we just need to be realistic. Research to be done properly needs to be takes that much longer.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, but I also think as a team we've really tried to kind of offer some of the nurses that are interested to do their own projects the chance to jump on some of the ones that are already sort of open, and, you know, like some of the NIHR projects that we're recruiting to, because it helps sort of build that skills and that confidence. And it's interesting that the word fear was mentioned earlier, because I know that, I mean, you'll agree, I'm sure you'll all agree, that I've had a lot of nurses say to me that, oh, you know, that they're too frightened of it. And then we had to submit a proposal for an academic qualification for a research study, and they've come to seek some advice, and they're usually absolutely spot on and fantastic ideas that, you know, that they've really thought through. So I think some of it is the confidence thing, isn't it? So that's something you know, that's something that can be worked on, can't it, by sort of pitching into other projects and kind of work there on things. So I think that's a way of helping that, isn't it?
So I'm aware that we're kind of heading towards probably having to close down our discussion, and we should think about some of our concluding thoughts, perhaps. I'm just going to come, Vanessa, to you, because I think you've probably got a comment. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, just a comment about, and we, you know, this is something that, you know, we probably need to come back to as well in future episodes about, you know, nurses don't always just need to be involved in the research, but it's also about how we make sure nurses are up to date with research as well, isn't it? And things like this are great because they're really open and they're inclusive and anyone can attend them. But, you know, often nurses don't have access to up-to-date research, or you know, they're busy doing the day job, and the culture is that they don't have the time for professional development. So I think, you know, it's something about thinking about how we make research more accessible to nurses so they can use it in practice, but also how they're involved in the conversation like this one, because it's also about nurses being able to critique research, isn't it, and say, well, you know, that wouldn't work in practice because of this, this and this, or that would be great in this area where I'm working, or, you know, so on and so forth. So it's not really a question as such, it's more a comment. And I don't think we can probably do much justice to it now, other than to say to people who are watching, it's really important that you are involved in these conversations throughout this week and, you know, ongoing really with MHTV and any other opportunities that you can access. Because it's not just about going to formal events, is it? It's about being able to access research in other ways, such as through social media as well.
Yes, it definitely is. I don't know if
anyone else has got any thoughts, but that was it, really.
I agree with all of that, Vanessa. I do. Helen, any kind of closing messages for you? Is there kind of one thing you'd want to share with people?
Well, just to get involved, really. Go on. Every trust will have a research department who are helpful, friendly people. Just go and have a chat, really. It's not, we try not to have barriers, really, and support people. So please get in touch with your local research team as much with your academics.
Yeah. So pick up the phone, email, get in touch with the R&D department, get involved, find out what's going on.
Yeah.
That's great advice, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Steve, how about you?
I would like to say that if anybody's really interested in the actual more about the actual survey evaluation and how Karen came up with the ideas and developed it. On the slides there is her email. Certainly her email is on the front page of the soon to be published article, so they'll be able to see that. One outstanding thing, if I was going to critique the research, would be that the most we believe that it was the carer who actually filled in. Moreover, and that usually does happen in a memory service. If you work as a memory nurse, you will ring probably the carer, because it's the service user who may well get frustrated or agitated with all these complicated questions. So how to involve the actual service user in terms of an evaluation of the service, and just now's the time to me for mental health nurses to show and capture what they're doing in terms of advanced nursing practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And your paper with Karen is it published yet, Steve, or is it on its way?
It will be coming out. I'm told it's coming out this month, but that might go into October because we're getting into the last month. But it's certainly, it's pre-publication. It's all ready. It's all gone through every different parameters, and that'll be in the British Journal of Nursing.
Right, I was going to ask, just to let people know, British Journal of Nursing, Karen and you writing all about her evaluation of the advanced nurse practitioner role.
Yeah, with Dr. Subha Thayagesh and Dr. John Stevenson as well, yeah.
Great, okay. Thank you. Kevin, how about you? What would be your closing messages or thoughts?
I think it's just to say, stay inquisitive, really. Inquisitive mind is the start of a good research project. And I suppose there's a kind of from a managerial point of view, don't be afraid to use your personal development reviews, your supervision, some of those kind of times, if you want to explore research, to try and get that support from within the organisation. And also, like Helen said, really, try and speak to your local research department, really, because they'll be really happy to hear from you. Trust us, they will be.
Your phones will be ringing off the hook.
We hope. Yeah.
Yes. Nikki, how about you?
Don't be intimidated. I think when I first started, I assumed everybody in the world was much, much, much smarter than me, and that I had nothing to contribute. They'd already thought of everything. It's not true. Different perspectives are what drives everyone forward. It's got intelligence, not that much to do with it. Knowing your job, knowing the things that are important, knowing the problems that need to be solved, and actually communicating with your research department, getting involved. I mean, look at these guys, these researchers. They keep saying, call them. Call your research department, say, Kevin Williams said it was okay. Absolutely participate. And also, if you don't understand, say, the times when I've really struggled to keep up, and all I had to do was turn to the person next to me who really wanted to share their knowledge and say, can you explain it again? And so don't ever assume that people will think less of you for asking, because they won't. They're desperate to tell you about their research. One of the biggest mistakes you can make at any conference is to stop anybody and tell me about your research. You never get away from them.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. Yeah, Vanessa, how about you? Do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of what's already been said tonight, really. I think it's been a great panel because it's been really grounded, and I think the message has been, research is accessible and all nurses can get involved. And I think that's the kind of important message, isn't it, from tonight, really? And nurses can make a difference. Nurses can, make a difference and change things for the better. And you don't need to be highbrow to get involved, as somebody said in a question. And I think my comment, what I said at the end, really, about even if you don't want to do research, you can still get involved in research. You can still read research and change your practice based on research as well. So I think for me, that would be my question. And I think it's an ongoing conversation, isn't it, that we need to continue to have. So that's it from me, really. And thank you, everybody. It's been really interesting, as always, tonight. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot.
I've learned a lot. And for me, I would just say that research is most definitely everybody's business. So I would echo everything that's been said. I'd encourage people to become more involved in it. There's so many ways of becoming involved in research. And we've heard loads of examples today about how people might do that. Don't be shy.
Yeah, absolutely. Then I guess all that remains is to say goodnight to everyone. It's been a late one. Night night. Take care. Bye bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.